On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a term called film noir and my experience that I had trying to replicate it. So here we go. Film noir, it's a cinematic term used primarily to describe stylish Hollywood crime dramas, particularly those that emphasize cynical attitudes and sexual motivations. Hollywood's classical film noir period is generally regarded as extending from the early 1920s to the late 1950s. Film noir of this era is associated with a low-key, black and white visual style that has roots in German expressionist cinematography. Many of the phototypical stories and much of the attitude of classic noir derived from the hard-boiled school of crime fiction that emerged in the United States during the Great Depression. I participated in a group photo shoot entitled The Film Noir 2019. Well, the thing about it was, one thing that kind of differentiates a film noir style type shooting versus just normal black and white is the lighting. Rather than just turning your camera to black and white, or in your digital software just clicking the button to turn it to black and white, it has to do with a really harsh light on one side, really deep shadows on the other. You've got some sort of mood going on. I've seen a couple of shots where people will use a smoke machine, kind of fill the back air with smoke and throw up a light up against it. So you have this nice smoky kind of scene, but essentially it's a really harsh black and white photo. A lot of photographers will tend to stay away from harsh light or shooting during daylight because they don't like the harsh light. Well, with film noir, you can use it to your advantage. And that's kind of what I did during our shoot. When I first arrived there, I noticed that everybody had all their lights and everything set up. And so I brought my lights. I had my lights with me as well, but I actually wasn't intending on using them. I know it's kind of silly since I'm trying to shoot in the style of film noir. But probably a couple weeks prior to the photo shoot, I was looking through online and I wanted to challenge myself. Rather than just shooting with lights, I actually wanted to challenge myself to shoot a black and white noir type photo shoot with just the lens, quote unquote, a natural light photographer, as some people like to say. Well, the thing about it was, yes, I shot it quote unquote all natural. However, I was using ideas and techniques from it. So let me kind of start off. So a lot of photographers there, the first thing they did is they pulled out their camera, they pulled out their zoom lens or whatever, the really nice fancy equipment. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? In order to shoot in the style of film noir and to shoot in that 1940s, 50s kind of era, I need glass. I need a lens that actually is more representative of the time of that era. So yes, I've got plenty of really expensive lenses that I could have used. However, I chose the one that I thought was going to represent that era best. And you'll notice some filmmakers will do the same thing. When they're shooting an epic piece or they're shooting a time era piece, they'll grab lenses from the 1960s, from the 1970s, that gives it that feel. And that's more of what I was after, was the feel. So the lens I ended up using, it's a Olympus Zuiko OM. It's for the 35 millimeter format. It's a 50 millimeter 1.2 lens. One of the characteristics about it is that it has this thing called bubble bokeh. You'll see in a few of the shots, don't necessarily look at the subject, look at the background. In the location that I was shooting at, I positioned the model in a way that any light spots behind it were actually going to turn into what's called the specular highlights. So that was the start of it. I wanted to use a lens that was representative of the time. And then at the same time, rather than using lights, because I knew I was going to be moving around, I wasn't going to sit static in one spot and shoot the same location, the same spot for more than a few seconds. So I just went with the lens, shot with the lens, and repositioned the model around and around and around. It worked great that I didn't have the lights because I got a ton of shots that I got to pick and choose from. So here are a few of the shots. Take a look at this. wasn't just me shooting. And there was another photographer next to me, and we both shot this model at the same time, getting different looks. And I would help her. I would grab her light and pick it up. She had it on the stand. I'd pick her light up and kind of help angle her light and whatnot. But for me, I was all over the place. I was directing the model, telling the model how I wanted her to pose, putting her here, putting her here. And the whole time while I'm doing this, I'm keeping in mind the techniques of film noir with the really harsh lighting and the really, the harsh lighting, the shadows and the stuff in the back. So the way I would position my model, I'd put the sun facing her in one direction. I would make sure that I was in a spot where I could actually light the back with just the sunlight. I could actually light the back, and then on the shadow side, what I would end up doing is in the software, I'd come in, I'd darken up the shadow side, lighten up the light side, and I tell you what, in some of the photos, you can't even tell that I was just using all natural light. You'd look at them and go, oh my goodness, that it looks like you're using lights. And to some degree, I think the next time I go out and shoot in the style of this, I definitely want to use lights because I'm trying to get that look. It's kind of an edgy look, it's a harsh look. And I'll post 2 pictures. I'll have to find one where you can actually see somebody using lighting where it's really thick. The light is very crisp on their face, where on my photos, the lighting on it is very soft and subtle. We had a blast. The model, she was wonderful. And actually I'd gone through a couple of different models. I think all in all, I ended up shooting 3 different models, and they were phenomenal. They were just tons of fun to work with. Great attitude, great personality. And their clothing. Oh my goodness. A lot of the clothing was another photographer had. I guess he has this huge closet full of just clothing, which I'm a little jealous because I need to bulk up on my extra clothing for models and whatnot. But yeah. So while we were there, I ended up helping the model. I ended up helping the other photographers, kind of posing them, and boom, we got some gorgeous shots, just wonderful shots. So yeah, so going back into the software, like I said, for this one, I'm going to be bouncing back and forth. So in the software, once again, because I wasn't using lights, I really focused on making sure that I positioned my model just right. And then inside the software is when I was going to take care of lighting and darkening. For some of the older photographers, it's called dodging and burning. So this Olympus lens that I have, it's a manual focus lens, which I'm okay. I shoot on a ton of manual focus lenses. Well, the moment I switched to model number 2, she was a bit livelier. And she was moving around, her positioning, I mean, just everything that she was just doing at a faster pace. She was moving much quicker than I could actually manually focus. So that's when I popped out my 70-200 lens. And at that point on, I would say my 70-200 lens is probably my bread and butter of all the lenses that I own. It's the one that I shoot with the most. When I'm working with the models, here's a couple of the things that I'm looking for. First of all, before I even begin shooting, before we even get to the location, when I meet someone, whether it's a model or it's someone I'm actually being paid to take photos of, the first thing I want to see is I want to see what their energy is like. So when I first met the model, she was very bubbly, big smile. She was excited to be there. And the moment I saw that, I'm like, okay, you know what? This is gonna be a piece of cake. Not that anybody else isn't a piece of cake. It's just, she was already ready for the shoot. She already knew, she was already in that mindset. And once I realized that she was already in that mindset, I no longer had to worry about trying to get her in that mindset. I know that kind of sounds silly, but during the photo shoot, and you may have experienced this as well, let's say you go have family pictures and you haven't had it done in like 5-10 years, or probably not that long. Let's say you haven't had family pictures done in like 5 years. Okay, the very first thing you do when you get in front of the camera is like you tense up. Your smiles are all, kind of like this, you're nervous, and hopefully the photographer is skilled enough to bring you at ease. Almost all my photo shoots, probably about the first 10-15 minutes, I'll take a bunch of random shots, and the whole idea is just, you hear me snap in the photo. I call them test shots. Sometimes I'm testing the lighting. I've already got it set. Before we even started the photo shoot, I've pretty much got all my settings dialed in. I'm just trying to fine tune them right at the very end, or right at the very beginning of the photo shoot. After about 10-15 minutes, then boom, the photo shoot actually begins. So, and the reason is because by then, you're relaxed, you know that I'm there to make you look great. And one of the things I tell the people that I work with is, you know what? You worry about fixing your hair, unless you have a stylist. You worry about fixing your hair, you worry about make sure everything looks great, your clothing, you've got the right clothing, you've got the right look, your hair is done correctly, your nails. Take care of yourself. Once you sit down and I have the camera in front of you, you let me take care of the rest, because I'm gonna make you look great. You know, as the Men's Warehouse commercial, you're gonna like the way you're gonna look, or whatever, however they say it, you're gonna like the way you look. You know what? You're gonna like the way you look. You know, and if you don't, I can Photoshop another head onto you. I can put a background in there. It doesn't really matter. That's actually just a joke. I'm done. So back to the model. All three models, they in the three models, they all had a kind of a different kind of feel to them. The first gal that I worked with, they were all, like, first of all, they were all wonderful. They all did exactly as they needed to have done, and their energy was different. So what I ended up doing is I matched the energy. On my last podcast, I was talking about an old couple that grilled me. One of the tips he had given me was, he's like, match the energy of your client. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. And then after a number of years, it clicked with me that, you know what? If I have a client that is really hyper, yeah, let's do this, yeah, I match that energy, I meet them where they're at, and then you know what? From that point on, photos, they're dynamite. I know that I can pretty much ask them to do just about anything, pose like this, go like this, jump up in the air, and they're just gonna do it without even blinking an eye. If I have a model that comes in and she's really reserved, right off the bat, oh, you know, blah, 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 I'm gonna compliment the heck out of her. And then the first 10, 15 minutes, and like I said, this is even with the model that knows what she's doing, I am first going to take a bunch of very reserved type pictures. I'm gonna get classic shots, as I call them, and they're basically the shots that no matter what happens in the photo shoot, I have 5 to 10 shots that are just amazing, that they're gonna love them anyways. Sometimes I call them granny shots, and what I mean by that is it's the shots that the grandparents want. Sometimes when you're looking at photos or senior photos or family photos, and you have photographers that just get really, really creative, they're up in the trees, they're all jumping together, they're, you know, looking through a frame and this and that. Yeah, they're beautiful, they make awesome Instagram photos, they make awesome Facebook photos, but the only problem is that when you have too many of those, your eye wants something very neutral. Your eye is looking for something very, okay, you know what? This is a calm photo. This is a very beautiful photo. It has everybody. I can see everyone's face. Everyone's positioned well. Everybody's posed very nicely. It's one that I can actually put up on the wall. Granted, the other ones, they're just as amazing. They're just as awesome, but it's the mentality. You have the older generation that was used to photos being taken like this, where they're looking off to the side, they're looking off this way, the lighting's coming here. It's a very traditional shot. So the grandparents and even parents today, that's the kind of photos they took when they were younger. That's what they're looking for. Even though they're not gonna tell their kids, they're not gonna say, hey, I want a shot like this. That's a couple of shots that they're looking for. So I always make sure to get those out of the way. And then after that, then we have fun. So I met the models exactly where they're at in terms of their energy. I got the shots that I needed. If one was more reserved than the other, then I went more with more reserved type photos. Another model, she came in and she immediately was like, boom, 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 boom. Everything that I would have asked the model to do, she just did automatically on cue. The only thing I needed to do as a photographer was fine tune where she was doing things. And you know, I don't have any problem doing that. And I usually will ask the model, hey, are you okay if I make a few suggestions? Yes or no. If they're like, no, I got this, then you know what? I stand back and I just let them do what they're gonna do. And you know, it's generally, it's a good etiquette to have. I've met a lot of photographers. They like to give their opinion quite often, and I don't mind. Sometimes I listen to them, sometimes I don't. And so, like I said, it was kind of a different environment for me because I'm not used to group shoots like that. And I had a lot of fun. The moment that I started photographing the third model, where we were at, there was probably about 5 or 6 different photographers around me. And, you know, so at first I was a little nervous just because, you know what, I don't know these people. I don't know what kind of, you know, what's going through their head. Once I get the camera to my face and begin shooting, all that gets blocked out. And I tell you what, I handled her just like I've handled any of my other photo shoots, and we just hammered through the shots as fast as she could, pose here and pose there and hand up and arm like this. And I mean, everything that I directed at her, she did it on cue, no issues, and her photos were just gorgeous. All three gals that I worked with, their photos were just amazing. And so that was with me doing without lighting. Like I said, the next shoot that I go and do like this, that's quote unquote a film noir shoot, I'm gonna bring lighting, I'm gonna get it, because there's classic shots for film noir that I would like to get. So I can say I have them and I put them in my little bag of tricks. The next time that I have somebody ask me, hey, let's try something different. Oh, let's try this. I have a dress, or I've got a hat, it's a vintage hat. How can we make it look like an era piece or a timepiece? How can we make this look like a timepiece from like the 1950s or 60s? I'm gonna be like, okay, boom. Pull that little trick out, put it out there, and boom, fire it away. My name is Josh Gutierrez, and I'm with JK Life Photography, and this is the story behind the photograph.